What you like, what you're doing, what you wear, just come home.
The family reunion took place at King's Cross Station 10 weeks ago.
She saw me as soon as I saw her, and it was just one massive grin all the time. You know, it was fantastic.
Absolutely brilliant. It's the best thing that's ever happened to me.
We were just holding one another and thinking we're together again. Yeah. We're all together again. We're a family again.
But there was one member of the family who was unable to join in the celebrations, Linda's younger sister, Yvonne. 3 weeks ago, she travelled to Ashford from her home in Devon to meet the sister she last saw in 1977.
It's 17 years. What do you say? How are you going to react? Is she going to like me? It's a long time out of someone's life. It's been missing.
Exactly like I thought you would.
I feel like I'm home now.
I can't believe it, you look just like you did.
Yeah.
Where's all the wrinkles? Hard life, irons them out. Every Christmas I've sat and I've wondered, and every Christmas my mum sat and wondered, this Christmas we'll be together and we won't be wondering anymore, we'll be together, which is something we've both dreamed about for a long time.
I'm now joined by Chris Stray from the helpline. Chris, what's the latest you've got?
Fiona, we've had quite a good response on most of the cases featured tonight. On the case of 14-year-old Kerry Moran, a number of unconfirmed sightings of her begging in the Brighton area. On the case of Samuel Johnson, there have been possible sightings all over the country with him handing out leaflets. A couple of sightings of her Callum Bain in Greece. On the case of Lindsay Jo Rimmer, the young girl who actually went missing from West Yorkshire, a few calls coming through, but not enough. We'd like some more calls to come through. If anybody has any information on her or any other cases, please do give us a call in total confidence.
OK, Chris, encouraging news. Thank you.
And before we go, we've been asked to make urgent appeals for 20-year-old Sean Harper. He vanished after leaving a party in Kensington on Wednesday, the 14th of December. Sean was wearing a dinner suit when he disappeared. And Tony Dilroy, who disappeared on December the 11th. His red Cavalier was found at the junction between the M11 and M25 in Essex. Tony's 57 and had just returned from working in Germany. That's all from Missing Tonight. We'll be back in 1995, a year in which, sadly, thousands more men, women and children will disappear. Most will come home, but for the others, we'll need your help. Until then, we ask you, have you seen any of these faces?
A woman's story. A story of love lost. A story of love found.
Let's go to Mexico and get married.
Are you serious?
A story that happens once in a lifetime. Lindsay Wagner stars in the Danielle Steele bestseller, Once in a Lifetime. New Year's Eve at 9:14 on Anglia.
We all make mistakes. Yes, we do. We get punished.
A Touch of Frost, starting January the 8th on Anglia.
You're Barclaycard obsessed, aren't you, Boff?
No, sir.
Name another credit card.
Barclaycard, MasterCard.
To apply, call free 0800 007 007.
We're DFS. In our sale, everything's reduced.
This sofa just $398.
Save £261 from today, including New Year's Day, in our sale.
The Comet sale is now on with extra voucher savings. You know where to come.
There's never been an Esso shop like this before. A very latest Esso Snack and Shop. A fresh idea from Esso.
Take a plastic chair, 2 simple ingredients, a little magic from this, and take a plain white room, a piece of plastic like this, and... Introducing the Decorated Home. It'll show you simple techniques like sponging and graining and how to use them in exciting new ways, with step-by-step pictures to help.
Oops.
Don't worry, just brush it over and do it again. With every issue, you get new stencils that build into a unique stencil collection. So why not do something different, like this, or this, or this? It's all in the Decorated Home.
Movie Mayhem tonight at 10:20.
For the first time in our lives, we're free.
Free to land in
prison.
Now what? Intimidation? Try to fit in?
I'll see you later.
Or simply turn stir crazy tonight at 10:20 on Anglia.
So long, suckers!
This is Anglia Television. Now the evening news from ITN.
Good evening, welcome to the news from ITN. Tonight's headlines. Mr Major tells Labour devolution is dangerous. The double tragedy of the Alpine car crash family. And 2 women die in American abortion clinic shootings. The Prime Minister sparked a fierce row today by attacking Labour's plans to give Scotland and Wales their own parliaments. Devolution, he said, was a very dangerous proposition. But he was accused of exploiting the unacceptable face of English nationalism. Mr Major seized on the issue in a wide-ranging interview. In it, he admitted he'd had a bumpy ride this year and he promised to cut taxes as soon as he could.
In attacking Labour's devolution proposals, the Prime Minister has tonight been dubbed by Scottish nationalists as the King Canute of politics for trying to stop the waves of change. In his radio interview, John Major described Labour's plans for Scotland and Wales as ill thought out, claiming the party was entering dangerous waters.
All the things for the last 15, 16 years they've said are wrong. All the things they've attacked a Conservative government on. And they propose to spend the whole of their first year tearing up the British Constitution and legislating for a Scottish Parliament and a Welsh Parliament. What sort of priority is that?
I always thought that the Tory governments were against centralised government power. The last 15 years they've done that. Now we want to restore a decentralised framework within the United Kingdom, and all the electorate appear to want that as well.
John Major, seen here in Edinburgh, warns devolution could lead to a Scottish Parliament wanting to break away from the United Kingdom. But the Prime Minister's interview today reflected mainly on the Tory troubles of '94. He describes the year as a bumpy ride, but vows government economic policy will remain unchanged in '95.
For the last 4 years, the British people have had to take a considerable amount of pain in the interest of getting the British economy right. It would be folly to throw it away, and we are not going to throw it away for short-term popularity of any sort.
But the Conservatives' internal split over Europe is likely to preoccupy the party well into 1995. One former Prime Minister, Edward Heath, says it's now time for Tory left-wingers to unite and fight back against what he calls extreme right-wing troublemakers in the party. Adrian Britton, ITN, Westminster.
The relatives of the family wiped out by a car crash in the French Alps are this evening coming to terms with the accident, the second time they've faced tragedy. Ephraim Rotman, known as Freddie, his 2 sons, a daughter and a family friend all died in the crash. 20 years ago, Mr Rotman's sister and her family were killed in an air disaster near Paris.
The twisted remains of a Christmas skiing holiday that ended in tragedy. No snow, no ice, but somehow Freddie Rotman's Range Rover plunged over this bridge into the ravine below. The millionaire businessman, his 3 children and a family friend were killed instantly. At the Rotmans' London family home today, curtains were drawn in the teenagers' bedrooms. Family friends gathered together to share their sadness with an entire neighbourhood shocked by yesterday's accident.
One could not imagine anything worse happening to a young family, and you know, when it actually happens in your own road, it brings it right through to you how vulnerable we all are.
Mr Rotman's elderly parents flew back to Britain today from a holiday in Israel. For them, personal tragedy is nothing new. 20 years ago, their only daughter and her entire family were killed in the DC-10 plane crash outside Paris, at the time history's worst air disaster. Now their son and grandchildren are gone too. At the family's synagogue, religious leaders remembered friends they so recently joined in celebration.
It's a tremendous shock to the community. They've been highly respected members of this congregation. It's quite recently, on the 5th of November, that their son Guy was bar mitzvah and on these very premises, and it was a very joyous occasion.
Mr. Rodman's estranged wife Marcia is tonight grieving for the loss of her family. Her children's schoolmates, meanwhile, are grieving for the loss of their friends. Chris Roberts, ITN, North London.
A gunman shot dead 2 women and injured at least 5 other people at 2 abortion clinics in America today. The man, dressed all in black, walked into the clinics in Boston and opened fire on patients and staff.
Somebody tell me!
Terrified bystanders in a suburb of Boston minutes after separate attacks by a lone gunman at 2 abortion clinics in the same street. The killer, brandishing a hunting rifle, walked calmly into one building, opening fire at random. Within seconds, 1 woman lay dead, 3 other people had been wounded.
He just came in that clinic, opened up the door and started shooting anything he seen. He did not hesitate. He thought the office was open, so he just started shooting.
After the attack, the killer ran up the street to a second clinic. There he shot 2 more women and a security guard before running off. One of his victims died later in hospital.
One of the girls was bleeding and she wanted me to help her. And she was hit twice and I had blood. I went over to help her.
The killings bring to 5 the number of people murdered at abortion clinics in America. 1 man has already been sentenced to death in the electric chair for shooting dead a doctor. Extremists warned at the time that attacks like today's would soon become commonplace.
The Chechen president offered Russia a New Year ceasefire today, but only on condition that Russian troops pull out. It came as Moscow asked the United Nations for help with tens of thousands of Chechen refugees. There were more clashes today near the Chechen capital Grozny.
Another civilian victim of this war, taken underground into one of the few safe places in Grozny. As Maser Vakayev was treated, another tragic account of human suffering unfolded. She was at home when a Grad missile struck. Her nephew Aslam, who's 8 years old, suffered serious injuries. The doctors started emergency surgery. In the operating theatre next door, they're trying their best to save a child's life in appalling conditions. This conflict is being described in some diplomatic circles as Russia's internal problem, but it's increasingly becoming an international humanitarian issue. With such an intensity of air attacks, it's obvious how difficult, if not impossible, it would be to mount a relief operation here. For the 2nd day running, an oil pipeline bombed by the Russians burned out of control. The Chechens are defending a Russian ground push on 2 fronts, one of them here near an airfield where there's a standoff. Nearby, warplanes bombed a bridge. It had been an escape route for refugees. Later, in the underground hospital, 8-year-old Aslam died. The shelling started again when Aslam's father Saeed returned to his ruined home to carry out the body of his 2-year-old daughter Aina, who had died instantly in the attack. His wife Katiana clutched their surviving baby, mother in shock, the child oblivious to what had happened. Andrew Simmons, ITN in Grozny.
Here, another slow year for the housing market was predicted today. The Council of Mortgage Lenders said prices were likely to rise by only 2%. They blamed measures in the budget, reducing benefits and tax relief.
The housing market has been fairly tough this year. Moreover, next year won't be much better if today's forecast from the Council of Mortgage Lenders proves accurate. They expect house prices to rise by only 2 to 3% in 1995.
The market is really going to be hit by a triple whammy of higher mortgage rates, reduced benefit for those on income support, and of course the impact of lower mortgage interest tax relief from April. So those will all be negative effects on the market.
On the plus side, however, the housing market should be helped by rising incomes and falling unemployment as the economy continues to grow. But many of the newly created jobs will be temporary and badly paid, and not secure enough for people to take on a mortgage. This will also hold back the housing market.
The tendency to short-term contracts is very important because that means that people generally feel insecure about their employment. And again, that means there's no feel-good factor.
So it seems there'll be as little to cheer the house owner next year as there has been this year. And the housing market will remain in the doldrums for the foreseeable future. Ruth Lee, News at 10, Central London.
The American helicopter pilot held captive by the North Koreans is on his way home to Florida this evening. Bobby Hall was released today after being held for nearly 2 weeks. He was accused of spying after his helicopter strayed into North Korean airspace and was shot down. His co-pilot died in the crash. A new era began today for Britain's coal industry as the last mines were transferred into the private sector. The Energy Minister, Tim Egger, said the sell-off of around 30 remaining pits would raise £1 billion. Most of the coalfields will be owned by a single company.
Government Minister Tim Egger and the new coal chief chose Asfordby Colliery in Leicestershire as the setting for the historic handover. It was a fitting backdrop to begin the new era. Asfordby is the country's most modern pit, but it also evoked thoughts of how much the change has cost.
1947 was a watershed year in the annals of the coal mining industry and of the British people. A once fragmented industry came into public ownership.
When the industry was nationalised 47 years ago, there were 700,000 miners. Today the number stands at around 10,000.
It is a smaller industry, of course. It's a more efficient industry. It'll be able to produce coal at a much cheaper price and therefore compete with imported coal and also with gas and oil as fuel to power stations.
Miners now employed by RJB Mining, which bought the biggest slice of the British coalfield, have been assured there will be no further cutbacks.
The business that we see, there's no closures now unless it's geological or it's colliery exhaustion.
Yet with only 3 years to run for contracts with the power industry, some analysts are sceptical about how mining will survive in the private sector.
It's up to National Power, Power Gen, to decide whether they really want to go on buying 30 million tonnes of coal a year from Mr Budge. And my guess is he'll really have to get the price of his coal right down if he's going to succeed.
Miners' leaders who led the strike against pit closures were even gloomier today, describing it as a disgraceful new era for the industry.
And that's tonight's news. From all of us at ITN, good night.
Hello, good evening. Well, some thoroughly unpleasant weather to come over the next day or two. Cold, windy, plenty of showers, and as those showers turn increasingly wintry, we're likely to find blizzards on the hills anywhere from, basically the Welsh Hills northwards. Low pressure, as you would imagine, looking after our weather for us, beginning to drift now out towards Scandinavia, allowing these increasingly cold northerly winds to run down across the country. Plenty of showers with them, and those showers turning increasingly to sleet and snow even by tomorrow afternoon. Probably the best of the weather by tomorrow afternoon in the most sheltered south. Let's start with the best of any sunshine available tomorrow. Sheltered parts of Northern Ireland, central lowlands of Scotland. Plenty of showers to start the day across some southern counties of England, though they will be tending to die away as we go through the day, and probably quite a fair afternoon. Elsewhere, though, plenty of showers. Those showers increasingly wintry, rain, hail, sleet, snow, lots of snow on the high ground, with blizzards with the strong north to northwesterly wind. As we said, a raw, chilly day, winds from the north and northwest, up to gale force in spots and very gusty, blustery too. Top temperature right down in the Highlands, lowest temperatures probably in northeast Scotland. That's it from me. Wrap up warm.
In 10 minutes, classic big screen comedy when Gene Wilder and Richard Pryor go stir crazy. That's after tonight's East and West Anglia News.
Hello, good evening. A young hit-and-run victim who nearly died when she was knocked down by a car in April has finally returned home. Doctors feared that Dominique Anderson would never walk or talk again. But now the 9-year-old from Wellingborough has given her mum the best New Year present ever by returning home for good.
On the surface, Dominique Anderson looks like any other little girl, enjoying time at home with her family. But behind the smiles is a story of remarkable courage. 8 months ago at this spot in Henshaw Road in Wellingborough, Dominique was struck by a hit-and-run driver as she walked home from school. She suffered massive injuries and was close to death. Doctors said that if she did survive, she would never walk or talk again. But with the support of Mother Marie, Dominique began the fight back to health. Just 6 weeks after the accident, she was allowed out of hospital to celebrate her 9th birthday. And now, after months in a special rehabilitation unit, she's home for good.
Fantastic, really brilliant, yeah. It was a lovely surprise because we didn't expect to have her home for good, just for the 2 weeks holiday.
In October, the driver of the car which struck Dominique, 34-year-old Neil Cutler, was jailed for 3 months. He was released early at the beginning of December for good behaviour.
Can you ever forgive him?
No, I shall never forgive that man, never.
Dominique still has difficulties talking and is a little wobbly on her feet, but she's improving day by day. For her mum, that's all that matters.
A woman from Bedfordshire has been named as one of 5 Britons who died when a Range Rover plunged into a ravine near a skiing resort in southern France. Sarah Hall was 23 and lived in the village of Ravensden near Bedford. She was on a skiing holiday with the Rotman family from London when the accident happened. Her father Jeff is a retired police officer from Bedford. 30 vehicles have been broken into in Huntington. Cambridgeshire police say that they were inundated with calls from residents on the Oxmoor estate. Windows of their cars had been shattered and items stolen, including car radios and cassette players. Police say that the vehicles appear to have been attacked at random. Soccer news now. Northampton Town are hoping to persuade a big-name manager to replace their sacked boss, John Barnwell. He was given his marching orders last night after just 16 months in charge of the Cobblers. Despite Barnwell's efforts, the club have continued to languish near the bottom of the 3rd Division. And with Mike Walker, Ron Atkinson and Howard Kendall all on the unemployed managers list, the board at Northampton are hoping to attract someone with Premiership experience. That's all for now. We're back with more news tomorrow lunchtime at 1:05. Until then,